The blue perimeter died with a sound like glass under snow. Not a crash. A soft, final give. Rain took the yard back in the same breath, and the house felt thinner for it, as if the walls had been holding a held breath they could no longer afford. Path first, Juno said. She was already at the waist-high slit, fingers hooked into wet grit, hauling stone aside with the maul's blunt end. If water owns the east room, it owns the foundation next. The rifleman did not argue. He braced the lantern low and shoved his shoulder into the seam. Cold air poured over them, mineral and old, carrying the smell of sealed places and moving water. Min flattened at the stair lip, gray fur spiked, eyes locked on the black throat as if the dark had a pulse. Juno went first because waiting was a decision too. The crawl took her on elbows and knees through collapsed masonry that scraped her jacket raw. 10 feet in, the passage widened enough to crouch. Stone ribs arched overhead. A shallow runnel of black water cut the floor and vanished east under rubble that still ticked as pressure shifted. A system prompt ghosted across her vision, thin without the perimeter's feed. Service access, partial. Flood risk, rising. Material conversion, available, local only. Warning, boundary offline, local only, she muttered. So nothing from outside the house until we rebuild the line. The rifleman crawled up behind her, rifle dragged muzzle back to keep grit out of the action. Those marks on your map. Still moving. She blinked the overlay wider. 2 points beyond the crawlspace mark, slow, patient, closing on the foundation through rain-dark ground. Not circling like the night things upstairs. Coming with purpose. Yes. She pressed her palm to the wet stone and felt vibration, not claws. Flow. Water's pushing the east joists. If that room drops, it dumps weight into this throat. He pointed the lantern past the first collapse. Beyond it, something gleamed, not just water. A metal grate half buried in silt, and behind the grate a recessed panel the same blue-veined stone as the pillar upstairs. Juno's urban planner brain sorted faster than fear. Drain control. Valve access. A buried path that was infrastructure, not mystery. She could hate the world later. Right now it was a system with a failure mode. Brace the ceiling with whatever we can convert, she said. I'm taking the grate. He wedged broken ribstone under a sagging arch, while she fed loose timber scraps into a recessed tray the system highlighted at her knee. Wood vanished. Blue seams raced through the arch and hardened with a resin creak. Cost numbers bit her reserves hard enough to make her jaw lock. Min yowled once from the chamber behind them. Warning, not complaint. Above, the east room answered with another wet inward bow. Juno jammed the maul under the grate lip and heaved. Rust screamed. The grate lifted a handspan, then stuck. She reset, drove again, and the whole panel came free in a slurry of black water that soaked her to the ribs. Behind it, a narrow maintenance shaft dropped at a steep angle, lined with handholds and pale glyphs that woke as the lantern light touched them. Not a map of the yard this time. A map of service tunnels, a sealed node marked storage/filter, and a third mark she had never seen. Core AUX, blinking deeper in, offline. The 2 outside points accelerated. They're not hunting the door, the rifleman said quietly. They're hunting the line. Juno looked from the rising water to the shaft, then back toward Min's silhouette at the chamber mouth. If she sealed the grate and ran upstairs, the flood still came. If she went down alone, she might open a valve and drown in the dark. If she took both of them and left the cat, the house had no early warning. She shoved the grate aside and swung her legs into the shaft. Min comes. You hold the arch and watch the points. If they hit the foundation before I find the valve, you call and we collapse this throat on purpose. That's your plan. That's the wall, she said, and started down into the buried path, while cold water climbed her boots and the house groaned like something learning it could break. The shaft spat her into a service gallery just tall enough to stand if she kept her head ducked. Water sheeted along one wall in a controlled fall that had become uncontrolled where a filter grate had torn free. The storage/filter node sat ahead like a stone lung, half submerged, its intake clogged with silt, root, and something fibrous that looked too much like hair. Min hit the floor behind her in a wet gray blur, shook once, and immediately stalked the high dry ledge along the gallery's left side. Smart cat. Better instincts than most people she had trusted with a city plan. Juno waded to the node. Overlay text stuttered, then locked. Filter module, degraded. Clearance required for AUX power. Flood route. East joist cavity foundation. Manual override. Physical no polite menus. She jammed both arms into the intake and tore free handfuls of cold sludge. Something sharp cut her palm. She ignored it, fed the worst debris into a conversion slot that accepted organic waste with a disgusted blue flicker, and got back resin braces and a short composite pry bar for her trouble. Ugly trade. Necessary trade. A sound carried through the stone, not water. A low, rhythmic thump from outside the gallery wall, matching the map's nearest ground point. Whatever hunted the line had reached the foundation skin. Juno. The rifleman's voice rolled down the shaft, tight. North point stopped. South is under the east corner. I can hear it scraping stone. Hold, she shouted back, and drove the pry bar into the filter's jammed rotor. It gave with a crack that sprayed black water across her face. The node shuddered, coughed, and the sheet fall along the wall slowed as veins began to turn again, grudging and loud. System notice, partial drain restored. East pressure, falling. AUX path, unlocked. 12M a hatch unsealed in the gallery floor with a pressure pop. Warm air rose from it. Wrong warm. Machine warm, not house hearth warm. The core AUX mark brightened. Min's ears pinned. He backed from the hatch, then stopped, stared, and made the low continuous sound he reserved for things that did not belong in any ordinary night. Juno did not open it yet. First, she braced the gallery with 2 quick resin posts converted from the last of her loose timber, then hauled a stone wedge across the shaft base as a crude check valve if the rifleman had to drop the throat. Only after the waterline visibly dropped 2 fingers on the wall marks did she kneel at the hatch. Inside, a compact chamber built around a dark crystal core the size of a helmet, cradled in metal that looked grown rather than forged. Dead indicators ringed it. One slot was empty where a secondary cell should have sat. Another held a cracked cell leaking faint blue dust. Module available. Auxiliary shelter core offline. Requirements. Stable power cell / authorized bond / structural link. Warning. Foreign presence detected at boundary trace foreign presence. Plural, if the map was honest. She pocketed the cracked cell's intact contact plate on instinct. Parts were parts, and searched the chamber's wall niches. In the third niche, she found a sealed case with a surviving power cell, cold and heavy. Etched with the same surveyor marks the shelter used above ground. Not luck. Inventory left for a caretaker who never came back. Installing it was a choice with a cost she could feel before the prompt confirmed it. Bond the AUX core, and the shelter would grow a new module tree. Deeper storage, better filtration, maybe a second perimeter ring. Fail the bond, and she might brick the only backup the house had. Leave it offline, and the next flood or hunt would find them weaker than this minute. The south scrape became a hard impact. Dust rained from the gallery ceiling. Juno set the cell into the empty cradle. Authorize, she told the dark, because talking to systems was how she kept her hands steady. Juno Hale. Occupant. Builder. Blue light climbed the crystal in uneven bands. Pain lanced behind her eyes. Not attack. Handshake. Images that were not memories flickered. Trench lines under the ridge. A buried ring of shelters. A maintenance creed cut in stone. Grow the shell. Feed the line. Do not open the deep gate alone. The core caught. AUX core, online. New module branch, sublevel expansion. Available now. Drain control node / sealed locker / sensor spine short. Cost. High. Confirm 1-1. Not 3. The system never let greed look like strategy. Another impact. The rifleman cursed above. Min spat at the wall. Drain control, Juno said, because water was the knife at their throat, and knives first. She confirmed. The gallery floor plate shifted. Hidden channels opened with a grinding song, and the standing water dropped hard toward a sump that had not existed a minute earlier. Through the overlay, she watched the east joist cavity pressure fall from critical to merely bad. Then the sensor spine option grayed and relit on its own for 3 seconds, enough to paint the two outside presences in clearer shape. Not beast exactly. Low, broad, plate-back diggers, working the foundation like engineers with teeth. And behind them, farther upslope, a third mark kindled. Larger. Still. Juno, the rifleman called, voice changed. Something else just lit on your map. Bigger. It's not digging. She sealed the AUX hatch halfway, scooped Min under one arm, and climbed for the shaft with the new drain nodes still humming behind her. Then we finish the wall where the diggers are, she said, already converting the last resin into portable seal patches as she rose. And we find out what waits when the digging stops. They met in the sublevel chamber as the last of the east drip slowed to a sullen tick. The rifleman was mud to the elbows, lantern soot on his cheek, eyes harder than when the perimeter first died. He had dragged 2 heavy stones to the service mouth and lashed them with wire into a dead man brace. Practical. She filed that under useful and still not family. Drains holding, Juno said. She set Min down. The cat immediately claimed the warm seam by the pillar, tail lashing. AUX core is online. We bought a module branch. I spent it on water control. Good. He jerked his chin upward. Because the diggers hit the east footer twice. Third hit didn't come. They're waiting on the big one. She threw the sensor spine residual across her vision while it still had charge. The 2 plate-back shapes had withdrawn half a body length from the foundation, crouched in rain. The third mark sat upslope at the old ruined path, unmoving, as if seated on a chair only it could see. Watching the house learn. Juno hated being studied. Materials, she ordered. Everything non-essential upstairs converts. We harden the footer from inside and push a short exterior skirt if the system will take wet stone. They worked like a crew that had not agreed to be a crew. He ferried broken furniture, warped doors, even the ruined wardrobe panels. She fed the pillar tray until her shoulders burned and the overlay's resource bar climbed from panic into merely desperate. Blue filaments ran through the foundation stone. A low exterior skirt extruded in uneven plates where the diggers had scored the earth, ugly as scar tissue and twice as welcome. Shelter growth. Foundation skirt, partial. Defense rating, +1 local. New option, tripline spikes, crude, / interior locker / name claim blinked once, almost shy. She ignored it. Names were for people who had nights to spare. Spikes, the rifleman said. Locker, Juno said at the same time, then shook her head. No. Spikes. Deny the approach. Locker after we live. He almost smiled. Almost. They confirmed spikes. The skirt sprouted a jagged line of resin-stone teeth angled outward, low enough that a running body would meet them at shin and throat of a crawl. The rifleman raised the weapon, then lowered it when he tracked her eyes to the floor. You opened something. I opened drain and auxiliary. Her mouth was dry. The creed said not to open the deep gate alone. I didn't touch it. As if in answer, the AUX core's link pulsed through the pillar and a sealed locker extruded from the chamber wall with a clean mechanical sigh. System completing a growth queue, she had not confirmed. Inside, dry cloth wraps, a sealed water ampoule, a short folding spade, and a metal plate etched with 3 words in the shelter's block script. Warden route. East spur under that, smaller, rifle protocol / escort bond pending. The rifleman's breath left him in one controlled leak. He did not reach for the plate. He looked at Juno instead, waiting to see if she would put a name on him now that the house had. She picked up the plate, turned it so lantern light caught the cuts, and did not ask the question burning her tongue. Not yet. Trust was a structural load. You did not add it midstorm without checking the joints. East spur, she said. That's the buried path beyond the filter. If the deep gate is waking, the diggers outside may be the least of the line. A new impact shook the skirt, not digger. Heavier. The upslope presence had finally stood. On the fading sensor ghost, it looked wrong. Bipedal, draped, holding a long tool that might have been a staff or a surveying pole crowned with teeth. It raised the tool once, as if measuring the house's new outline, then drove the butt into the mud. The perimeter stuttered, not fully back. A broken ring of blue flickered at ankle height around the skirt spikes, died, flickered again. The system clawed for a boundary with the AUX core's help and could not finish the circle. Boundary attempt, 31%. Missing, second bond / external anchor / line OF site marker, second bond. The rifleman read over her shoulder. His voice had gone careful. That's me. Or the cat. Or whatever's under the deep gate. Min growled at the floor. Juno made the choice the planner in her hated and the survivor required. She slapped a seal patch over the deep gate, dashed warning on the wall as if physical denial meant anything, then pointed the rifleman at the stair. You take east window lane. If the drape thing comes in range, you do not fire to kill. You fire to drive it onto the spikes. I finish the exterior anchor from the service mouth. Min stays on the warm seam. If he bolts down the shaft, we follow, because that means the deep side moved first. And if the system wants a name? She met his eyes. Rain ticked through the weakened east boards above them like a clock with bad manners. Then it can wait until I know whether you're a rifle with a man attached, she said, or a man who chose this wall. He held her gaze one beat longer, then nodded once and went up the stair 2 at a time. Alone with the pillar light and the cat, Juno dropped into the service mouth, drove the folding spade into wet earth beyond the skirt, and planted the first external anchor spike the AUX core would accept. Blue climbed the metal. The boundary crawled another 10% toward hole. On the map, the draped figure tilted its head as if it could see the percentage too. Far below, past filter and AUX and every seal she had refused to open, something answered the boundary's broken song with a single, patient knock from the deep gate side of the stone. Knock. Pause. Knock. Juno set the second anchor with both hands and did not look away from the dark throat of the buried path, because the house was growing again. And growth, she was learning, always woke whatever had been buried to feed it.